Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're talking about the CRKT Pilar. And there she is, guys, our CRKT Pilar, designed by Jasper Voxnaes. And Jasper Voxnaes has several designs with CRKT this year, and most of them are pretty sweet. This happens to be, I think, the smallest of the designs, and what we get with this one is a knife that's about 3.5 inches long, closed, with a handle thickness of a fairly skinny 0.44 and a closed height of 1.33. And as we look down the side of it, we got a stainless steel slab here. All the hardware is slightly countersunk. It's not sunk flush, but slightly countersunk. A big lanyard hole that you can stuff 550 through, or a double strand of gutted 550 with no problem. As we roll it around to the bottom, we've got a big backspacer down here that also works as a tube for our lanyard hole. And most of the rest of the back is open. Got our stop pin down here. And on to the other side, we have a nice little clip. Now, it's nothing fancy, but it seems to work pretty darn good. And it's tip up, tip down, right hand only. Now, that's a bit unfortunate, but sometimes in these small designs, that's just what we get. And we do have these nicely scalloped. I mean, it's a simpler way to machine this out, but it sure looks nice. See, we've got those little scallops there for our relief for the lock bar, instead of the nice flat area like you would get on most lock or frame lock knives. And as we roll around to the top, we have another great thing. See, that tip of that knife is just perfectly centered down in there. That is a major advancement for CRKT for 2017. We've done 2 of them now. Both of them have ended up centering up perfectly. Now, this one I did have to disassemble and clean up everything inside the knife and put it back together before it centered perfectly. There was some leftover milling stuff and some goop down in there that needed to be cleaned out. Anyhow, let's go for a size comparison. First up, we've got a Rat Model 1. Of course, it's considerably smaller than the Rat Model 1 or the Buck 110. However, this thing still weighs 4.13 ounces, so this is not a lightweight. It's one of those little big knives, gives you a compact knife that has that big feel in hand, a little bit of weight to it. And our Delica. This thing weighs almost twice what a Delica does, or 1.5 ounces or so more, but it's still a little bit smaller than a Delica. Anyhow, let's move along to our blade. And our blade is a flat ground piece of 8CR13 MOV. Well done, kind of a satin finish to it, with some really nice swedge work here at the tip. Very nice on both sides. And we do have this opening slot, and I'm going to complain about that. It is left pretty darn sharp. It is sharper than most Spydercos, and even some of the sharper Spydercos. This is sharper than that, so may want to take that into consideration, and I'll probably run a diamond rod through there or a countersink or something and clean that up just a little bit, give it a little softer feel. And we've got this more like a 60-40 choil here. And as we'll see whenever we get to ergonomics, that is a rather important part of the knife. And the stock edge on this thing was not too bad. However, I have heard reports that some of them aren't coming out that great, and you guys saw what happened with the directive. It was not a great edge. Whoever was running the sharpening grinder was not doing a good job that day. And that's just unfortunately what we get, especially on some of these lower end knives, whenever you've got a laborer who's not getting paid a whole heck of a lot, probably enough to live on, but not getting paid extremely well, having to sharpen hundreds of knives a day. They're not all going to come out perfect. Now, if we wanted to pay more for the knives, they could pay the guy more and not require as many knives, and maybe we'd get better edges. But anyhow, this one wasn't too bad. And from here, we're going to go to our pause and read card, and I'll be right back with you. Alright, our pivot is a standard sleeve and torque screw, and it's running on Teflon bushings. However, pretty darn nice Teflon bushings. This thing falls free, locks up tight, and that frame lock is at about 35 or 40% there, and locks up just tight. No problems there. And closes, everything just works really, really smooth. Now, I did have to take this thing apart and clean up all of the gunk. There looked like some leftover mill junk in there and some goop. I don't know if it was what was supposed to be lubricant or not, but I took it apart, cleaned everything up, and put some Ozark in there. And as you can see, works great. And ergonomically, that's where that choil comes into play. I suppose you could hold this thing back here, but you would look kind of silly and feel kind of silly because it's not very long. Pinky's all hanging off, and that's, it's possible, but then you get yourself a long way from the blade. That forward finger choil is meant to be used anytime you use the knife, and it works great. Knife works great. You can get the knife just about any way you need to. It's not a real good draw cut knife, but I have had this thing in my pocket for the better part of 2 weeks and used it a little bit every day, and for what it is, it's great. And it's heavy. It's got a big old thick blade stock in it, just like that Spyderco Techno. It's a bit audacious, a bit ridiculous, but it just makes you smile to have it around. And like I said, the action on it is really good. If I can get my fingers in there right, it just works really good. And there's no fuss, no complaint with me. That thumb flick is a little hard because of the way you got to hold the knife, but do it in a standard Spidey flick with your middle finger works wonderful. And overall, it's a design that I really like. Like I said, it scored pocket time for the past couple of weeks pretty much every day, so that's a bit unusual for a knife that falls in that $30 range for me to actually want to carry it every day. And this one has won that place. As I told Mr. Voxnaes, I would love to see this knife in some titanium or carbon fiber, G10, and some higher end blade material. I really think this is a knife that could give the Techno a run for its money if we got it with similar materials. And one last thing, for those of you that may want to carry this thing in your pocket, tip up, this is what we get. So we got a 1/2 inch or so of knife sticking out. And the little clip isn't too bad, doesn't have too much flip up, but it's got enough raise here, it'll fit just about any type of pants you want to put it in. So overall, Mr. Voxnaes and CRKT has given us a great example of the little big knife. Alright guys, so that was the Pilar or Pilar, I'm not sure how they're pronouncing that, and doesn't matter, it is one cool little knife. Whenever these little big knives started to come about, I wasn't too much into it. Why would I have a 4-ounce knife with big old fat blade stock that really isn't something to clip to my pocket, that'd end up floating in my pocket, which is where this thing has been for the past couple of weeks? Why would I want to do that? But as you guys saw with the Techno review, I really like the Techno. And to be quite honest, if CRKT or Voxnaes or Giant Mouse knives came out with a version of this that could compete with the Techno, I'd probably snap one up because it's just a wonderful design. The ergonomics are great for your EDC tasks. The blade design, wonderful for EDC tasks. It gives you just a little bit of a point there, but it stays in that non-stabby, non-murdery look, and it just feels great in your hand. It's a beautiful thing. And anyhow, as you can tell, I rather like the Pilar. And the other thing that I'm impressed with, just like the Directive we looked at a week or so ago, the construction is pretty darn good. The blade centers up well. The action works well. It's a major win for CRKT with their Chinese line of knives to have stuff coming out that I can look at and any other reviewer can look at and say, hey, it may not be the best materials out there, but they did a great job with the machining and the assembly of that thing. And that's what they've done here. That's what they did with the Directive. And hopefully that continues with the rest of the 2017 lineup. And maybe they can even push it back into some of the older models and just get some better knives on the table. I would sure love to see that from all the companies. But as always, it's a wait and see thing. So far, the first two for 2017 from CRKT, the Directive and the Pilar, have been great. Anyhow, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.